Welcome to this webinar by ESG called Transforming Mainframe Workloads. I'm Vinny Choinski, a senior analyst with ESG, and I'm joined today by Glen and Shwetank from NTT DATA. Glen, why don't you tell us a little bit about your role at NTT?
Sure, Vinny. I lead the application modernization practice for NTT DATA. And in my practice, we build solutions and deliver solutions that are focused on transforming core business systems for our clients. That transformation really is specialized on modernization and migration solutions. And we have a specialization within that for sure on migrating and modernizing mainframe workloads.
Thanks. And Shwetank?
Yes, I am responsible for all of the products and IP that NTT DATA brings to the market in the space of application modernization and transformation. I lead a software development team of senior architects and developers, and there are two product lines within this team. One of them is Unikix that we will be talking about today. That has to do with mainframe rehosting. I've been in the field of mainframe rehosting since the summer of 1991, so that's about 31 years and counting. The other product line has to do with the automated and tool-assisted transformation of legacy applications to cloud-native applications. That's a product we have called Transformation Manager. And as the market demands changed to needing more than straightforward rehosting, I've been involved in those transformation-related software development initiatives for the last 15 years.
So, today we're going to chat about how Unikix software from NTT DATA on AWS can help accelerate digital transformation initiatives for mainframe workloads. Recent ESG research shows digital transformation initiatives continue to mature. In fact, the majority of our respondents indicated that they have implemented or are in the process of implementing these initiatives. What's your perspective on how mainframe workloads impact digital transformation initiatives? Maybe this one's to Shwetank.
Yes, I'll take this one. Mainframe workloads are the hardest to migrate off the data center and get on the cloud. And there is a reason, actually three that I will cite why they are the most complex. The first of these reasons is that these applications are truly legacy. So they were written 40, 50 years back. These days we call old Java versions, old Windows versions written 20 years back as legacy. These are truly legacy. And a lot of the resources, workforce who wrote these applications and had all the knowledge have retired. There is very little documentation left about these applications. And that makes it difficult to reimagine and redesign these applications. That's reason number one. Reason number two is that these applications were written at the time when the infrastructure that was available to these applications was minuscule, even lesser than what we have in our hands with cellular phones and mobile phones. The compute power of these applications was, in comparison, very little, and therefore application programmers resorted to a lot of trickery, I would call it, to make the applications perform to the expectations of the market at the time in 70s, 80s. When you first started with these applications. That trickery, when expressed in languages such as assembly language, is very complex to understand and map into the open systems APIs. The data representation on those proprietary platforms is EBCDIC, which is again proprietary. They're not like the rest of the world is ASCII. Even when there are high-level languages used, such as COBOL, which is a very English-like language, there are data elements that are redefined. In our worst case that we saw in the last 30 years, there was a financial institution, very large, very reputed, redefined the same piece of data 4,500 times. So you can imagine how difficult that would be to map to a relational database. That was reason number two, very complex. And reason number three is that these are mission critical applications. They are 7/24. They run the core business. They are not little reporting or peripheral applications. So a mindset of we'll fix it in the next sprint and we can take an outage now simply is not applicable to these applications. So there is fear that if I do something wrong, I might have a problem in many ways. Those are reasons why these are the hardest to transform and take to the cloud. Glen, you may have something more to add.
Well, I mean, it's all true, right? The difficulty level, the challenge is there. And the impact on transformation initiatives themselves is that there's this real tangible inertia in those types of programs. There is a reluctance to move forward on mainframe workloads because of the difficulty level like that. So we do see inertia. We see a long time, planning, a lot of analysis going into these things. A difficulty for clients to really get started on that. And because of that, we see some decisions being made where, rather than true transformation of the mainframe workload, we see a lot of surround strategies that sort of partially address the problem, but don't completely deliver the transformation they're supposed to. And unfortunately, a fair amount of additional technical debt accumulating.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. With these digital transformation initiatives, improved operational efficiency seems to be the key to what people want to get out of them. But not too far behind is, the ability to adopt new tools, process, interact, and collaborate in new ways. How does NTT Data and AWS help improve operational efficiency? And, does it help with collaboration? And maybe this one goes back to Glen.
Well, it's certainly both, Vinny, and it's funny. I just mentioned technical debt, and when we talk about improving operational efficiency, we can sort of translate that into what are we doing with technical debt? A transformation initiative will reduce technical debt, I think, from two different directions. So you'll have one of those directions is to make sure that in your transformation, your target, your end state, or even if it's an interim state in your transformation, is doing something to reduce your technical debt, or at the very least is not increasing your technical debt. And then from the other direction, you have to make sure that your transformation initiative is not recreating technical debt of the past. It's very, very common that a transformation initiative will just take a look at what's there and try to move it forward and not really attend to the fact that there's technical debt there. So our solution, Unikix on AWS, does it from both directions, right? The migration process itself is aimed to simplify the application, right? We're taking something forward without bringing dead code forward. We're standardizing things within the application itself. We're enhancing where we need to enhance as well. And then we're introducing, actually we have the ability to go even further than just pure simplification. We can actually dig into the old application, do some reverse engineering work. We can begin to extract the things that are valuable. So it's not just get rid of the dead code, which is sort of mechanical, but also let's not bring forward code related to old processes that might still be running, but it's just not relevant to the business anymore. So we spend a lot of time in our migration creating that foundation. And then, of course, on the other side, you're arriving at a target that is Unikix on AWS. And so all of the operational efficiency that's built into a move to AWS, the ability to do better monitoring, the ability to manage an environment better through just having more control over the environment and visibility with regard to how things are scaled or how things are not scaled, the ability to increase automation through Lambda functions. I mean, all of that is inherent in the move to AWS. And what we've done with Unikix and what Shwetank really has done with his product roadmap is to make sure that Unikix directly enables that kind of activity so that operational efficiency is not just better because we didn't take it with us, but it's enhanced because of where you've arrived, which is Unikix on AWS.
Well, that sounds like it can only help customers get to the next phase. So, our research also finds that 76% of businesses in the technology industry indicate a preference for consumption-based pricing models. Do you think mainframe shops are looking for the same? And if so, how do you help them get there? And maybe this one goes to Shwetank.
Sure. So in our experience, when it comes to which model customers are picking, mainframe customers for their migrations are preferring the dedicated hybrid environments over the consumption-based for their production environments. I have to make sure that I clarify that's for their production environments. And the reason for this choice is that the production environments of the mainframe applications are quite large in terms of the number of cores they need, the memory, the IOPS and network bandwidth. These are large compute, large configurations. And cloud providers, including AWS, provide very attractive discounts in their dedicated offers to these customers. So that's one reason why for production environments, mainframe applications are using dedicated or maybe hybrid environments. There's also a bit of what I would call a mental block, Vinny, where there is like, I have my arms around this piece of iron and therefore I have more security tightening. I know exactly what is going on here as opposed to it is somewhere in a different country, in a different geo. So that's also, but I would call that mental block. The main reason is the attractive discounts. For non-production environments, such as dev environments, test environments, maybe a new initiative has to be written in the next 3-4 months and you have a dev team, you need to spawn up a new environment. Instead of rolling in another piece of equipment into your machine room and getting involved with its procurement, you could use consumption-based models, and that is being preferred. For test environments, say your testing team is working and only 8-hour shifts, and for the rest of the 16 hours, you don't need to have a 7x24 environment set up. So for dev and test, non-production environments, our mainframe customers are using consumption-based models. As economies change, we may see, even for production environments, especially the smaller ones, people moving from dedicated to hybrid and eventually consumption-based. Unikix is ready on AWS, is published on the AWS marketplace for a consumption-based model. So we have listed hourly pricing for the entire Unikix package based on machine type. And of course, for the smaller machine types, the dollar amount is lesser. For larger machine types, we've gone up to the highest that AWS offers. We have a higher price. So it is ready to play in that role, not just for dev and test environments, but also for production environments.
Yeah, Shwetank, I think I'll just add on to that a little bit. I think you're quite right about when you bring up things like the sort of the mindset of where clients are at when they're transferring mainframe workloads. It's not just the mindset, though. To some degree, it's really the evolution, right? It's the journey that these folks are going on. So it's very, very reasonable to think of, moving the mainframe workload to AWS on Unikix and taking the value of that solution and then thinking about what comes next, right? We look at a transformation, total digital transformation of a mainframe workload as a multi-step journey that clients are going to go on. And so consumption-based models a lot of the focus does tend to be now on test and development environments for sure. We created our consumption-based model on AWS and published it some time ago because we think that it's important. We think that it's going to be increasingly important. We think that the mindset of clients who are running mainframe workloads is going to change the further disconnected those workloads become from that big iron, from the mainframe itself. The sort of the art of the possible is becoming front and center for our clients now. They're beginning to think more about not just what happens in terms of getting out of the data center or getting off the mainframe and into AWS on Unikix, but what happens next? How do you begin to increase the value proposition? How do you take the next step? How do you better integrate with AWS services to really get that return on investment? And a consumption-based model is necessary. So for us, we think that it's important, it's growing, but maybe early stages.
Well, I guess the good thing is whether it's production or test dev, when the customer's ready to go to a consumption-based model, you're ready to help them get there. So
absolutely
true. Yeah.
So I know you guys are both from NTT DATA, but can you tell us a little bit about the partnership with AWS and what makes it so special to customers with mainframe workloads? And maybe back to Glen on this one.
Yeah, for sure. So we're a premier consulting partner with AWS. In addition to being a premier consulting partner, we also have achieved AWS's mainframe migration competency. In fact, I think we were one of the first clients to go through this. It's a really, really rigorous process by which AWS reviews what we've done with our solution, reviews the solution itself. It's very deep into what the solution can do for clients before really awarding the competency. And so both the partnership and the competency mean certain things, right? We have access to different types of resources that we can bring to bear for our clients. We have a close collaboration with AWS, of course. We also can bring certain incentives to clients and accelerators that AWS provides through its competency program to help clients with their assessment phases, their design phases, even their migrations, the migrations themselves, to sort of make that a little bit easier on customers. We're also because we're part of the competency, we are part of the AWS partner ecosystem. We can take advantage of that. We can support that ecosystem. All of that brings pretty tangible benefits to clients. But the thing I think that really needs to be called out is that having gone through this process with AWS, our Unikix solution has been really closely reviewed. We've done a lot of work with AWS solution architects, with the mainframe migration team at AWS to make sure that our solution is acceptable, that it is going to add value in the way that AWS wants to bring that AWS value to clients. And it also validates that our solution has been, in a number of different ways, tailored for AWS benefits, has been optimized to take advantage of AWS services and bring those to our clients. And so I think it's a really, really important distinction for us.
Yeah, it sounds like you've gone a long way to make sure interoperability in the cloud really does what it's supposed to, especially with these workloads. In another survey, we asked respondents what the biggest benefit they thought they'd get from public cloud infrastructure services, and greater agility was at the top of the list. Also up near the top was faster deployment and improved support for application development. Were really close to the top of these categories. How do you think NTT Data with AWS capitalizes on cloud agility? Maybe this one goes back to Glen.
Yeah, I was going to jump in either way. So we've talked about bringing the AWS cloud benefits to clients through Unikix, and the fact that we've developed our solution with that as a focus. I think it's a really interesting way to express that when we talk about agility, right? AWS has been fairly specific in defining what they mean by agility, right? They actually have written some material about 12 factors of agility specifically for mainframe workloads, although I think they apply to any workload. And the idea being, and these factors are things like elasticity, horizontal scaling, pervasive automation, service-enabled modular applications. They're just factors that describe sort of qualitatively what your workload needs to be able to do in order to take the maximum advantage of cloud on AWS. And so when we put our Unikix, a workload on Unikix on AWS, when we put that solution up against those agility factors, we find that using Unikix to move a mainframe workload to AWS enables all 12 of those factors. Now, it's not pushing a button. It's not, there's work that needs to be done. Some of those factors are delivered just from the migration itself. Some of those factors are delivered over time because different types of work is now enabled because you're running on Unikix on AWS. But the factors are there, they're enabled. Conversely, AWS compares that kind of agility with the kind of agility you would get from a completely cloud-native sort of greenfield development or a complete re-engineering of the workload. The idea being, when you move your workload with Unikix on AWS, you're going to get those agility factors, that benefit, in a fraction of the time that you would if you went through a complete re-engineering. You may still go through that complete re-engineering as part of your transformation, but you're going to take those benefits a lot sooner than you would if you had just tried to re-engineer without actually thinking about a re-platforming, re-hosting type solution.
So a lot more than just talking about agile technology, it's actually delivering on it and making sure you can measure against that. That sounds great. I started my career doing mainframe administration, and scale was always critical. How do you think the partnership helps deliver and assure scalability for business critical mainframe workloads, and especially in the cloud? Shwetank?
Yep. So there's two aspects to the scalability challenge. One comes from AWS itself. AWS has load balancers. Those are focused mainly on the infrastructure. Am I okay in the terms of my CPU utilization, memory utilization, my IO bandwidth, network bandwidth, those kind of infrastructure related things. And I will see if I am not okay, then I will instantiate another VM in the scale set to direct the load there. So a lot of what we talked about, a resonating theme, Glen's statements, is we have integrated with AWS technologies and services. We have integrated Unikix with the AWS scaling so that we can take advantage of their load balances and their health checks of the operating scale set where the application is running. However, those infrastructure-based load balancers make a fundamental assumption that the workload that is coming is stateless and can be run anywhere. That is often not the case with mainframe applications. There are affinities that dictate that you have to run a transaction in the same place where you had run a previous transaction for various reasons. And those affinities exist at the application level. There are also application bottlenecks, such as queues that get filled up, execution slots that are no longer available. So sometimes you find applications running slow. People will tell you all the time that I have enough memory, I have enough CPUs, but I still am running slow. And those are application bottlenecks. So one of the many things that we have created as part of our integration with the cloud is Unikix Cloud Controller, a dedicated product that takes advantage of the cloud elasticity and bases its intelligent decisions on application health and application bottlenecks. So there are two levels of intelligence within Unikix Cloud Controller. One is that if there are application bottlenecks, I would instantiate another VM. And as demand increases, I will expand the scale set. As demand goes down, I will contract the scale set. The other level of intelligence is where is the place to run this next piece of incoming workload? Are there any affinities I should worry about? Is there data that can be accessed in this part of the scale set in this VM? So it goes beyond the infrastructure-based AWS scaling, and combined with that, Unikix Cloud Controller-based application scaling gets us the full advantage of the cloud and its elasticity.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sounds like you're looking at it from both angles. You know,
Yeah.
Glenn, is there a TCO or a cost reduction element associated with this solution?
For sure. You know, we talk a lot about the level of savings that you can achieve, and it's really significant, right? I mean, we find that we can save in some cases as much as 70% of year-over-year cost in running the mainframe workload through through savings related to the third-party licenses, consumption-based savings that are really, really significant. And when we talk about adding those benefits alone to the benefits of running on AWS and the ability to do consumption-based pricing, the ability to take advantage of all of the efficiencies that AWS offers in the cloud, that TCO savings is even more significant. Now, the savings is really critical for clients in some cases, and in particular, when the market is really difficult, as it is now, that cost savings becomes a goal in and of itself. What we also find for clients, and in some ways this is even more important, is that it's not just about trying to find the savings to just operate more efficiently, but to take that money and actually transfer that to something else that's more directly important to the business. So we find clients who use that savings to do business development, to transform their business processes, and to continue the transformation process. Because again, it's not necessarily the end state to be running on Unikix on AWS. There's likely to be additional transformation steps subsequent to that. So being able to create what is essentially a self-funding mechanism for digital transformation is a tremendous benefit of what we're doing.
Yeah, that's definitely a timely topic, and it sounds like you got it covered and can help customers.
Yeah, just Vinny, a couple of anecdotal things if we have time on this cost savings thing, and one topic that we discussed earlier. In our past experience in 30 years, there have been many occasions where customers have shared their savings with us, and it has been so astronomical that they've also said, please do not disclose this because I'll have a lot of pressures to pass along these savings to other stakeholders who will say, well, you have all this saving and I need a part of it. So it is tremendous cost savings. And another anecdotal thing was back to when we were talking about our mainframe partnership program for mainframe competency. Glen mentioned what we had done, and yes, it was rigorous. And just a fun fact there was we had met all of the requirements way ahead of any other vendor in the space. They had to reduce the rigor once and then a second time for other people to participate. That's how robust and complete the Unikix solution is for mainframe migrations. Just wanted to pass along those two anecdotal fun facts.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing those points into the conversation. So back to you, Shwetank. what are the common elements to successful workload transformation in this space? Do you have some experience from customers? You just mentioned a few customers on cost, but elements that are common when they have a successful workload transformation of the mainframe to the cloud, what those are?
Very good question, because this is very pertinent, very relevant in a climate where everyone wants to do this. My answer to this question is based on the experience of all of the migrations that were in the category of very successful. And there were three common elements. The first one that I mentioned is customer engagement. We need customer engagement all the way from executive sponsorship to the infrastructure owners, to the application owners, to those who are running the operations. Every one of them has to buy in to and subscribe to the modernization effort and see the benefits that the organization is going to have by unlocking these applications from proprietary mainframe hardware to and getting them to the cloud, and they probably will themselves benefit. So if there's a customer out there who thinks that we can just ask a vendor to, like, this is my mainframe, that's my blue box, get me on the cloud, and I don't want to hear about it for 2 years, that's not a winning strategy. If there's a vendor making such a claim, that's probably a false representation. So that would be my first element of success, is that we have customer engagement. The second one is that we use a time-tested, field-tested, product-based, and therefore repeatable solution. Don't go with somebody who's done it just once and doing it for the first time or second time or third time. There are a lot of nuances. This is a very technical project. Of course, you need all the project management, the latest methodologies and design thinking and agile, and all of that is required. But this requires expertise. And that brings me to the third point. You require mainframe migration experts, folks who know how the mainframe works and who also have learned how the new environment and how Java works, what's the promise of the cloud. They have to transcend the technologies of the 90s and 80s and have embraced the technology of the future. So those are very, very niche experts that you need for a successful migration. That's what I have seen. Glenn, you may have some more color to add to this.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I'll circle back to where you started, which was customer engagement, right? One of the things that we talked about earlier in our discussion is that there can be a certain amount of inertia built up around these systems, and there's definitely, I would say, a pretty high amount of sort of institutional anxiety around making changes to these systems that have been just running for decades and decades. And so it's really important that as you say, the customer is engaged, but that engagement really is that the stakeholders are committed, right? This is something that can really add value and make a tremendous change and really can remove a roadblock from a major digital transformation program. And it's important that everybody understands the benefit and everybody's committed to the success, right? And in some ways, you could say that about any really, really large transformation or IT project. It's certainly critical in this case as well.
Yeah, one thing to clarify, Vinny, on this is that we are continuously working to automate things in the migration so that the customer does not get bogged down in providing us details about their application. Just yesterday, we were working on a very reputed financial organization migrating off the mainframe using Unikix. And they came to us, say, don't ask me for 15,000 files. I don't think we need these many. So we worked through our tooling and reduced that set down to just a couple of thousand, and they were ecstatic. That so we are doing things to automate the migration where we don't ask customer a lot of questions. So this expectation of low touch is something that we are continually going towards, but as I said before, it should not be confused with low engagement. It's just we're trying to improve the processes, but that should not, it is not replacing the need for the engagement that all of these customer departments should have on the migration project.
Sure. And you kind of set me up for my final question, which was, what do you think the biggest or hardest challenges related to digital transformation of mainframe environments, whether it's the workload or whatever part of it? What do you think the biggest challenges, and would you like to leave the audience, or what do you want them to take away from this webinar when we're talking about challenges?
I think we both should take this question, Glenn. You can go
Yeah.
first, or I can go. You want to go first?
Yeah, by all means. It's definitely a question for both of us. We'll see if we have the same opinion. I've said it already, maybe a couple of times since we've been talking. I think getting started is a major challenge. I think understanding the roadmap for digital transformation for mainframe workloads, having a vision of that roadmap, understanding what the outcomes need to be, understanding how each step sort of drives the outcome, or each step contributes ROI there. I think that work, that vision and that commitment is important to getting started. And I think getting started is really, overcoming that inertia is sometimes the most difficult thing for clients. So I think that's the challenge from my perspective. And I think the message is, mainframe transformation is possible. It is valuable. It's important. The ROI is there, and it's critical that it not be neglected in an overall digital transformation program. There's my 2 cents. Shwetank?
Yeah, I'll just extend that answer. Absolutely correct. Getting started is key. And the first thing that should come to the customer's mind there is vendors and a selection. It's not a vendor selection kind of a project. It is what is the right solution? What is the right approach? This is very important now because the market's gotten very confusing. Back in the 90s, when we first started, there were only a couple of companies who used to offer mainframe migrations, and there was only a handful of people who would be brave enough to do a mainframe migration. I mean, even Unix was very new, and people used to say it's not as reliable as the mainframe. So it was easy to select because you're selecting from two, but very few wanted to do. Now everyone wants to do this, and therefore there are hundreds of people out there saying, I can do this, and some of them are just a bunch of programmers rewriting code and on the whiteboard and slinging some code. So how do you go about the process of selecting somebody who is not going to end up into a failed project? That is the hardest part, because you have to weave through a lot of claims and select the one that will get you to success. That's my answer. And you have to have a trusted advisor in that selection.
Both responses make a lot of sense. That's about all we have time for today. As always, I wanted to thank everybody for joining the webinar, and thank you, Glen and Shwetank, for being my guest today. If you'd like to learn more about this topic, make sure to check out the following link.
Thank you, Vinny.
Thanks, Vinny.